Hello all, it's Charles Watts here, Arsenal correspondent at Goal. I hope you're well in what is pretty depressing times at the moment, wherever we are in the world. First of all, start by saying that I hope everyone's health is good and spirits are being kept up when, it's very difficult, I suppose, at this time with everything that's going on, everything we're seeing in the news, and I know loads and loads and loads of people have been affected one way or another by what's happening with the coronavirus, and I hope you're all as well as you can be, and you continue to be well for the weeks and months ahead. I thought I'd come on now, just talk about what's going on. Obviously, I did a video update in terms of what was happening with Arsenal a couple of days ago, and the coronavirus all moved on massively since then. I'm sure you're all aware by now of the situation at Arsenal and where the club sort of finds itself, but I thought I'd come on and just talk through it all, and also answer a lot of your questions as well as I can. Look, I'm not a medical expert. I'll put that on the table now. I know about as much about the coronavirus as anyone else does, and I'm not going to pretend to know any otherwise. But in terms of Arsenal and what's happening there, I would at least try and answer the questions that I can, or as well as I can, as well as I possibly can do, involving the club and where things are and how things might pan out over the coming weeks. And I put a question out on Twitter saying, if you've got any questions, then please do reply, and I'll try and answer them as much as I can. And I've got my laptop here. I've got lots and lots and lots of questions that you guys have fired in over the last hour or so. So I'll sort of go through as much as I can with those now, and like I said, try and answer as many of the questions as I possibly can, as best to my knowledge anyway. And apologies if I can't answer yours, because if I can't answer it, I can't answer it. But I'm going to do my best to explain the situation and hopefully make it a little bit clearer in terms of where we are with Arsenal right now. Before getting to your questions, I'll just talk through obviously what's happened in the last sort of 24 hours since I last did the video. That was on Wednesday morning. That was when it was announced that the Arsenal-Man City game had been called off, which was due to be played on the Wednesday night, and that was because a few of the Arsenal players had gone into self-isolation because they'd been in contact with the Olympiacos owner, who had come out earlier in the week and admitted that he had coronavirus, and that's the situation. Players were due to return from isolation on Thursday. The whole squad was due to train on the players who weren't in isolation were supposed to train on Thursday. Then on Friday, everyone would come together again and would train ahead of Saturday's game against Brighton. But events have unfolded in the last 24 hours that have meant that it's impossible, and have led to far bigger things as well in terms of the Premier League and English football. It was announced late last night, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, that Mikel Arteta, Arsenal's head coach, has contracted coronavirus. Arsenal released a statement on their website. It had quotes from Mikel Arteta, had quotes from Raul Sanei, the head of football, talking about it. I'm just going to bring up that statement now, just in case you haven't seen it. Just to give you the quote. So Mikel Arteta said, "This is really disappointing, but I took the test after feeling poorly. I will be back at work as soon as I'm allowed." And Raul Sanei, I always get that name wrong, said, "Mikel and the full first team squad, players and staff will be fully supported, and we look forward to getting back to training and playing as soon as medical advice allows. Obviously, Mikel's full recovery is the priority now for us all." What happened was Mikel Arteta took training on Tuesday with the whole squad, because this was before it was announced that some of the players had to self-isolate because of they've been in contact with Olympiacos owner. That will pass normally, and then on Wednesday the players had a day off, and that's when Mikel Arteta started to feel ill. He started to show symptoms of coronavirus, so he underwent a test, and that test came back positive about 9 p.m. last night, and then about half an hour later Arsenal released a statement confirming the news. With that, as Mikel had taken a full training session with the players on Tuesday, obviously been in contact with them all for a long sustained period of time, so the entire first team squad has to be isolated for 2 weeks. All the coaching staff has to be isolated, club personnel like masseurs, security at London Colney, everyone, communication staff, media staff, everyone, basically more than 100 people, well over 100 people as far as I'm aware, have had to go into self-isolation at Arsenal now. London Colney's been closed, Hale End Academy's been closed, both are being deep cleaned. And the period of isolation for the players started on Tuesday, and that will end on March the 24th. They'll all have to stay at home until then. Obviously, that's had far bigger implications for football. Arsenal are due to play Brighton on Saturday, and then Sheffield United in the FA Cup on the following weekend. Both those games have been called off. They were called off at the time of the statement, basically, but it's since now come out because things have snowballed. Late last night, about 2 a.m, Chelsea announced that Callum Hudson-Odoi had got coronavirus. Since then, this morning we've had Everton squad go into quarantine because some of them have been showing symptoms. The same with Watford, Bournemouth, and basically the Premier League now have finally done what I think we all expected them to do a lot earlier, and they should have done a lot earlier. They've now called off football. It's not just Premier League, Football League as well. UEFA have called off Champions League and Europa League. Premier League has been suspended. I'll read you the statement that's just come out from the Premier League in the last half hour or so. Following a meeting of shareholders today, it was unanimously decided to suspend the Premier League with the intention of returning on April the 4th, subject to medical advice and conditions at the time. Premier League Chief Executive Richard Masters said, above all, we wish Mikel Arteta and Callum Hudson-Odoi speedy recoveries and everyone else affected by COVID-19. It is an unprecedented situation. We are working closely with our club's government, the FA and EFL, and can reassure everyone the health and welfare of players, staff and supporters are our priority. Despite the challenges, it is the Premier League's aim to reschedule the displaced fixtures, including those played by academy sides when it's safe to do so. In this fast-moving environment, further updates will be provided when appropriate. So, as it stands, the Premier League is suspended until the weekend of April the 4th, and then the situation will be reviewed at that time. In my mind, this is just my mind, I think it's madness to even have a date on it, because this is something we're in for the long haul. Coronavirus isn't going to go away. I'm sure you all saw Boris Johnson yesterday, his press conference, surrounded by, the best medical advice in the country. And that medical advice is that we're not going to see the peak of this virus until into June, well into the summer. So how they can expect football to just come back in 3 weeks' time and this all sort of cleared up and everything be fine, I have absolutely no idea, because players may be self-isolating at home now and protecting themselves. And if no one shows symptoms, they'll come back in a couple of weeks, and then all it takes is one player to show symptoms, which will happen because the virus is still very much going to be in circulation at that point. Then we're going to have to go through the whole cycle again. So it just seems madness. I mean, how on earth they think it's going to all carry on as normal from April 4th, I have no idea. I don't know why they've put a date on it. It should have just been suspended indefinitely. But that's my opinion. Like I said, I know nothing about the medical facts, but in my view, that's the situation. So as far as Arsenal are concerned, basically the club's shut. It's closed, on lockdown. Training ground, Hale End, everything's shut. And anyone who's come in close contact with Mikel Arteta is quarantined, and the whole place has been deep cleaned. So that's where we are. So I hope that's helped you out a little bit and not confused you massively. I apologise if it has, because like I said, I'm no expert on this. And now I'll get round to some of your questions that have come in on Twitter. There's plenty of these, so I'll do my best to do so. Peter Host, who I see regularly on Twitter, he's replied, Peter, I think this one's not so much about Arsenal, it's more about England and how our government's handling things. He said, do you have an idea why England seems so reluctant to take actions the rest of Europe are watching in disbelief? I don't, I'm afraid. I just got to go with what the government is saying. And obviously we all saw the press conference yesterday. We saw their reasoning behind it and the chief medical officer's reasoning behind it, and why they're taking a slightly different approach to the rest of Europe, and they're trying to manage the level of the peak of the virus so it all doesn't come in one huge spike like we're seeing perhaps elsewhere, and it's instead a sort of gentler upslope until June before it starts coming down. But that's all I can say on that. Nishad asks, would Arsenal be awarded a Champions League place based on last season's finish, and considering City is banned from Europe if the league is suspended? Look, it's hard it's impossible. I can't imagine that if the league does end up being declared null and void, that they're going to just take the league table from last season. I mean, there's so many factors to work into what would happen if the season got declared null and void. Relegation, promotion from the Championship. You think it's going to be an absolute legal minefield, and the Premier League is still making it very clear at the moment that their intention is that the season will be finished one way or the other. Euro 2020 is supposed to be played this summer. I think we're all pretty sure that is going to be pushed back potentially till next summer to become Euro 2021. That maybe gives them some leeway to push this well into the summer. Whether that means that next season will have to start late, I don't know. It's all things to be decided. I mean, this is an unprecedented situation. It really is. So it's really hard. No one, I don't think even the people at the Premier League will have a clue about what's going to happen at the moment. They're just sort of keeping an eye on the now rather than looking too hard into the future, because it's so hard to even begin to ascertain where we could be in a couple of months' time. So I can't see it. I mean, as much as I would love that to happen, and last season's table is taken into account, and it goes down to the top 5 going to the Champions League, but with Man City's ban, obviously, which means Arsenal will get the final spot. But I can't imagine it will be. Evan asked, how do you think things such as the summer transfer window will be affected? Well, it will be affected, because if the season ends late, sorry, I've got my computer on. I'm just keeping up to making sure I'm not missing anything. This is a fast moving situation, as I'm sure you're all aware. Yeah, I mean, the summer transfer windows, you think it's going to have to be affected if this season runs late, which it looks like it's certainly going to be now, considering everything suspended until April the 4th at the earliest. Then yeah, you got to think that the summer transfer window will be affected. It will probably start later, or will have to be pushed back later, or even squashed into a real small time frame, which will not be ideal for clubs. But it's certainly going to be affected. I think it's going to affect the clubs too much. It's just because they'll have their targets already. They'll already been putting a lot of groundwork into who they might be looking to sign in the summer. So I don't think it's going to affect Arsenal's plans too much in terms of who they want and who they aren't going to have, other than if the league ends and then you're not, and they just say wherever you finish when the season has been declared null and void is your finishing spot, whereas Arsenal, we're 9th at the moment, and that means they wouldn't be in Europe, and so Arsenal would miss out on the millions that would come in from the Europa League places. So that could have an effect, but again, it's all hypothetical at the moment. It's really hard to really say anything for certain. Ryan says, if the league can't continue, should the league table end as it is today, or should they pretend it never happened and cancel it? I'm not sure about ending it, like I was just talking about then. I'm not sure about it ending if the league table just being viewed as it is today, because it's not a finished season. So for me, I think it has to be declared null and void. I don't see how you can just take the season as it is now, because there's still 10 games to go. So no, for me, I think it should be cancelled. For me, I think that's the only way around it. Maverick asks, I know a lot of Hale End and London Colney employees and staff have been affected by the coronavirus, but what about Emirates Stadium employees and staff? The thing with Emirates Stadium employees and staff is they wouldn't really have come into close contact with Mikel Arteta, which is where this has all stemmed from. And when I talk about close contact, it's got to be within 2 metres of Arteta for a sort of sustained period of 15 minutes. And no one's really going to have been in that... going to fall into that category in terms of Emirates Stadium staff. So I don't think that's going to have it's going to have an impact like it had at London Colney and at Hale End. Let's see. I mean, people are asking about player names. People are asking about Aubameyang and Granit Xhaka. I can't answer that, I'm afraid. Player names not being given out in terms of who's potentially suffering from the virus or not. As far as I was last aware, no player has shown any symptoms yet of having the virus. So I think it's all speculation and social media rumours. If you see any of the players being linked to actually having the virus, I think you've got to take it all with a pinch of salt. In terms of what I've been told, that no player has shown any signs and symptoms Yes, it was just the fact that Mikel Arteta has. That guy tweets, our season extended but a player out of contract this season on June the 30th. Won't we have players with a couple of fixtures left effectively free agents? A lot of clubs will, if that is the case, if it does extend until June. So it's not going to be just an Arsenal situation. And that's another thing that the clubs are going to have to consider and the Premier League's going to have to consider. Not just Arsenal, but not just in England, but I imagine across Europe, because you look across Europe now, pretty much all the leagues are suspended. I think Bundesliga is the only one that's not at the moment. So it's going to, players running out of contract and basically being asked to play with free agents. That's just a situation they're going to have to deal with. Whether you can sort of extend a contract for a month or so just to cover that period, I have no idea, I'm afraid. Sir learns a lot. Sorry, I'm just going to have a cup of tea. Sir learns a lot. Says the impact of COVID-19 on Arsenal's recruitment plan while in isolation, and are players still training. As I said, I think the impact in terms of COVID-19 on the recruitment plan, it's not going to change in terms of targets, really. The only thing is if the season did end now and Arsenal were to finish outside of a European spot, that will have an effect because certainly not going to have the Champions League money, but you wouldn't even have Europa League money. And although that's not masses, it's still, like this season, 20 million, last season, near enough 40 million. So it's still, valuable money to add to the transfer budget. So I think that would be the only issue, is that it would affect the plans. And obviously Arsenal wouldn't have European football to offer their targets, which might make it harder to get them to agree to move. But in terms of the actual recruitment plan, I would say that probably stayed the same. They know what players they want. They'd have been putting things into place for an awful long time. They're not going to wait until the summer. They'd have been talking to agents. Well, I know they have been talking to agents. And things will be already moving in terms of the summer recruitment. So I don't think it's going to have a massive effect. The one big thing would be, as I said, the budget itself. If the season was to end now and Arsenal were to finish and not be given a European place. A lot of these questions that have come in, and if I'm not answering yours, I do apologise, but it's just a lot of them are very similar, so there's no point me just going over and over again talking about the same answers. A lot of people are talking about the transfer window, as I've tried to explain earlier about, will that change, how will that affect Arsenal? People are asking, are they going to outright abandon the season? What would that mean in terms of prize money? How Tilo asked how possible is it to cancel the season. Some funny questions on here as well. People are not quite taking it too seriously. On Matisei, I apologise, Matisei Isaac, if that pronunciation is rubbish, I do apologise. Says, how's the team and staff coping with Mikel Arteta's news? As far as I was aware, everyone is keeping their spirits up as much as they can. Mikel Arteta is supposed to be fairly positive about it. Always just annoyed that he's now got to stay away for 2 weeks and can't work with his players. I don't think, in terms of how he's feeling, I think he's feeling okay. He's just frustrated about what's happened and the timing of it. I know what Mikel's like. He's a workaholic. He wants to be out on that training pitch all the time. He wants to be with the players all the time. So this is going to be really frustrating, him having to sit at home for 2 weeks and not being able to do anything. Especially given the run of form Arsenal being unbeaten this year domestically in 2020, only Premier League side to have that record, and he'll want to carry on. And obviously can't do that now, so that's going to be frustrating him. So morale's going to be a little bit low in terms of that, but in terms of how everyone's feeling and how Mikel Arteta's feeling physically, it's not too bad. What else we got? People talking about if the Premier League season gets cancelled, will there be a champion this season again? I can't answer that, I'm afraid. I don't think even the Premier League can answer that at the moment. As funny as it will be if Liverpool don't get crowned champions after the season they've had, I can't answer it, I'm afraid. I really can't. Depressive Guna there asking about any news on Arteta and the seriousness of his illness and any other players coming down with the virus. I've tried to answer that already earlier on in this video. What's this one from Graham? If the league gets cancelled, we should award Champions League places to Liverpool and Leicester and have a set of playoffs in the summer. for the other two in such a way that gives advantage to the higher places. That's an interesting shout, Graham. Have a playoff situation for everyone who could still technically qualify for the Champions League. So that would be what, obviously, if you're presuming that Man City are banned, you got Manchester United, Spurs, Arsenal, Wolves. Could you go down lower than that? I'm not sure, but interesting. It certainly makes for some exciting games. Sumik here is asking, what happens with relegation, promoted places, European places. I can't. I'm afraid answer that. Arsenal latest asks, what would my ideal and most logical outcome of the current situation be in terms of the league? Look, I think Liverpool have to be crowned champions. We all know they're going to win the title. As funny as it'd be if they weren't crowned champions, I think whatever happens, if the season was to get declared null and void, they should be crowned champions. But I don't know. There's still 10 games to go. Technically, they could lose all those 10 games. Man City could win all theirs, and Man City could be champions. It's clearly not going to happen, but it could. So it makes it really difficult. And in terms of the other places, I think everything's so tight. You can't just shut the season down and take it on the places. So for me, ideal situation is declared null and void. What that means for European places and things like that, I'm just not so sure. But I just don't see. Yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult for me to answer. It's such a difficult situation, and I can only imagine the legal minefield that it's going to be. Whatever the Premier League decide, if the season was cancelled, it's just going to open them up to legal issues everywhere, I imagine, and they'll want to clear that out. They want to avoid that as possible, and you can see by their statement, they're determined to get this finished. And I imagine one way or the other, they probably will somehow, even though even though you sort of look at the forecast in terms of where the virus is going to be in the next few months, and you wonder how they're possibly going to manage to do that. Hadeja asks, why not go for COVID-19 test instead of all this isolation? Well, that's the new government rules. Now, if you saw them yesterday announced on Friday, no one, unless you have to go to hospital with the coronavirus, it gets that serious that you need to go to hospital and not just stay at home and self-isolate. You don't have to take a test, but if you go to hospital, that's when you'll get a test. The only people who are now being tested are those who end up in hospital. Everyone else is being urged to stay away because they don't want to infect NHS staff. They don't want to put even more stress on the NHS staff, which are going to be absolutely tested to the limit over the coming months. Those frontline services in the NHS, it's scary what they're going to have to deal with as this gets worse and worse over the coming weeks and coming months. And they're doing their best. The government are doing their best to try and limit that and to ease the burden on them by trying to get people to stay away from hospital and not have to take the tests and things like that. Because let's face it, for most of us, this is going to be a mild illness when it happens, and it looks like it's going to happen pretty much everyone. I think 80% they reckon is going to have it in the country one way or another. Most of us, it's just going to be a little bit uncomfortable, a bit of a cough for a few days, a bit of a temperature. But for the elderly, for those with pre-existing medical conditions, it gets a hell of a lot worse, and that's the people that they're trying to protect right now. So they don't want to waste time and resources by testing everyone if they're all going to have a little cough like basically we normally have at this time of year anyway. Mark Gooner, man I know very well, hello Wilkins, wants to know anyone else in the squad confirm a corona. No, as far as I'm aware, Mark, no one has been yet. As of yesterday, I was told no one was showing any symptoms. It was just Mikel. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure you saw. I don't want to scaremonger or anything like that, but you look at how close Mikel was. He took full training session on Tuesday, and he came down with illness on Wednesday. He would have been high-fiving, shaking hands, hugging. I think it's going to be almost impossible to think that the virus hasn't been passed on one way or another in that time. So I think it's inevitable that Arsenal players are going to contract the virus if they haven't already. So I'm sure that will emerge over the coming weeks. But as far as I'm aware, at the moment, no one else, there's been no other confirmed cases apart from Arteta. Has asked any news about the tests on the players and their families. As I said, they're not being tested unless they have to go to hospital. It's just stay at home. If you show symptoms, don't go out. Stay at home. Manage things as best as you can. And if you need to go to hospital, that's when you'll get tested. But as far as I'm aware, there aren't any plans for the whole squad to be tested now, because that's not what the government guidelines are saying. Michelle asks, what happens to kids' football teams on a weekend? I'm not sure about sort of non-league or kids' football teams, Michelle. I'm afraid I haven't really looked into that. But I think it's probably, I imagine with kids' football, it's just a decision of the managers or the parents even. So, but yeah, I don't know, I'm afraid. Laura asked, does Arsenal have a system in place for their staff that are in self-isolation? What are the numbers and how will it affect everything? I mean, they have a system. They'll certainly, it's just go home and stay away for 2 weeks from your last point of contact. So the player's last point of contact was on Tuesday with Arteta, but I know some of the staff who are now isolating, that time frame varies. I know one person, for example, who I spoke to, he came into contact with Mikel on Monday, so his 2-week isolation period started on Monday in terms of the date, so he'll actually come back from that a day earlier than the squad will. But then there are other staff members who is different. So it's each just depending on your last point of contact with Mikel. That's when your isolation period started. But Arsenal will be standing in contact with everyone who's off, everyone who's having to isolate. Offering them as much support as they can, making sure they're well. Because this doesn't just Arteta and the players. They're the one. That's generating the headlines at the moment. But this is way bigger. You think there's 100 staff, well over 100 staff in terms of what I've been told. Your security, your chefs at the training ground, the cooks, the cleaners, everyone like that. This is affecting who are having to go into self-isolation. They've got the worry for themselves, the worry for the family, the disruption. This is a huge thing. And best wishes to everyone. This isn't just about Arteta and the players. Yes, they're the stars, they're the big names, but it's far wider than that. I just want to say best wishes to them all, and I hope the next couple of weeks goes as smoothly as it possibly can for them. Chris Tatum there, a good question. Possible reimbursement of tickets, not just Arsenal, but every club travel arrangement, etc. Look, this is something for the club, Chris. I know they're looking into it. There are the terms and conditions in terms of tickets and things that need to be looked over, and this is an unprecedented case. I'm sure the club will do all they can to make sure fans aren't left out of pocket, but I don't think anything's sort of been worked out and decided yet, and that's going to all happen in due course. But I understand that's a really big thing for fans and supporters, because they're missing out on games. If games get suspended, if the season gets called off, what happens there? And that's something that will all sort itself out over the coming weeks, the coming months. At the moment, I can't give a definitive answer on it, but I know a lot of fans are thinking about that and looking at the terms and conditions, because they pay good money and they want to, they pay good money to see football, and at the moment there's no football, and possibly if things get worse, there isn't going to be football for the rest of the season. So, the club, you'd hope that the club would reimburse on that, but it's all about terms and conditions and things like that. But you hope that the club are very sympathetic to the supporters and how much money they've spent, and but hopefully we're still going to get to see football. So we'll have to wait and see on that. All right, that's pretty much it. Like I said, there are plenty more questions here, but I'm just scrolling through them all, and they're all much of a muchness. I've answered. There's no point going through them all and just giving whatever the same answer over and over again, repeating myself. I know that a lot of these answers I haven't really been able to give you a definitive view on it, because a lot of it's hypothetical and it's way above my thinking in terms of what the Premier League can do, what Arsenal are going to do. But I hope I've at least tried to answer some of your questions on the subject. And like I said, apologies if I haven't actually read your question out, but it's only because I've answered a similar one, or tried to answer a similar one somewhere else down during the video, and it would just be me repeating myself. So that's about it. Like I said, I hope I've been some sort of use. Probably not, but I hope I have been some sort of use. Finally, just on me, for some reason, a lot of you have been messaging me, asking how am I, and that I've been in close contact with Mikel and the squad, and how am I doing? I'm fine. I've got no symptoms. I don't have to self-isolate at the moment because when we've been in contact with Mikel, it's not been considered close enough contact for that. We haven't been sort of sat face to face for 15 minutes within 2 meters of each other. We've been in big rooms, and when we have been closer, it's not been for a sustained period of 15 minutes. So thank you for the messages. Appreciate them all, but I am fine. Touch wood, and we'll see how it goes over the next few weeks. And I hope you, as I said at the start of this, I hope you guys are all fine and well, and you continue to stay fine and well over the next few weeks, yourselves and your families. Do what you can to stay safe, and wash your hands and all that. I'm sure 20 seconds, 30 seconds, sing a song or something, and do all you can to stay safe. And I hope you all have a good week or so, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without football. What are we going to do? What are we going to entertain ourselves? We've all got to self-isolate probably in the next month or so. Perfect time to watch football, but we're not going to watch any. Chuck on the season review of the 2004 season. Just enjoy the Invincibles, something like that. Get on Netflix. Just finished watching The Stranger. Really good series. Enjoyed that immensely. All right, guys. Thank you very much for your time. Do the typical English thing and have a brew and try and relax about the situation. Thanks for watching.